Okay, Jaden, I'm going to talk you through some of these problems from class. So this is problem 2.3 on page 34, and it's about the two t-shirt companies that this class is choosing between. And the one charges $49 plus $1 per t-shirt, and the other company, the No Shrink company, charges $4.50 per t-shirt. They give you these two equations, and they're asking you, at least in this first part, what does the y-intercept and the coefficient of n represent? And then a couple other questions there. But let's just first look at these two equations. And I set up two tables of values. All right, so here's the first equation, 49 plus n. N is the number of t-shirts, so I just went 0, 10, 20, 30, and calculated the cost, according to this equation up here, for those numbers of t-shirts. So for 0 t-shirts, you have this upfront cost of 49. For 10 t-shirts, you got to pay the 49 plus $10. So that's 59 altogether, and so on. For the other company, there's no upfront cost, the 0, 0. If we plug in 0, we get 4.5 times 0. And then it's $4.50 per t-shirt. So 10 times 4.5, that gives us $45. For 20 t-shirts, $90. For 30 t-shirts, $135. Okay, so the question is asking us what the y-intercept means. So let's kind of draw the graph because that's the easiest way to understand the y-intercept. For this C mighty, I'm going to write CM for short. Remember the equation was 49 plus n. So I'm going to plot, the very first point was 0 on the n and 49 on the C. It's going to be right there. And then for 10 t-shirts, it was 59. So if I think of like, so something like here. For 20 t-shirts, it was 69. 30 t-shirts, 79. Okay, so this is starting a little bit high, but going a little bit more, somewhat slowly at least, it seems. So this is mighty. Okay, this point here on the y-axis, this 0, 49, that is the y-intercept. Okay, so as you're thinking about what that means, in this problem, we've kind of talked about what it means already. I'd like you to put it in your own words. Okay, for the other company, we have 0, 0 as the first point coming from my table, and then 1045. So for these number of t-shirts, this No Shrink company is its line is underneath. So that's meaning the cost is less. But then look, when we get to 20, this price is coming up to $90. For 30, up to $135. So although this the No Shrink company starts cheaper, it ends up getting more expensive when you order more shirts, right? So if you wanted to order maybe 10 shirts, you should go with the No Shrink, but if you want to order 20, the Mighty is going to be cheaper. Okay, so the y-intercept we talked about. The independent variable, I think you probably realize that that's going to be the number of shirts because the cost depends on how many shirts you order. And then let's talk about the coefficient of n. Okay, so this one, its coefficient is sort of invisible there, but that's 1n. So we could also write this equation as 49 plus 1n. And then our other equation, the No Shrink equation, the coefficient of the n is 4.5. So here we've got a coefficient of 1. And here we've got a coefficient of 4.5. I'm going to leave it to you to explain exactly what those two numbers tell you in this situation. Okay? As you're going through, the part A will ask you when the two companies will cost the same, right? So you'll notice that it's got to be somewhere between 10 and 20 We used two different strategies to figure this out in class. We did 12 t-shirts, 13 and 14. And we were able to find that for 14 t-shirts, they each cost $63 using our equation. So that part in the table told us when they cost the same. There were some students that drew a very careful graph and were able to see that this point was $14.63. Okay. So for this problem, I want you to just focus on part A. That's all we really got to in class. And if you really understand part A, you'll be good for problem 2.3. All right, I'm going to comment on a few of these problems that we had for homework. So skip this part B. One problem that you had was this problem with Tara and Ingrid walking to school. When you're thinking about this problem, go back and look at the problem we did with Henry and Emil, with them doing the walking race. This is super, super similar. Okay? Let's see. Anything in here? So it's asking you about points on the graph and what that means. I think you should be able to work your way through that, I think. This was another problem, and that's about reading the graph. Number 8. Here we go. So this asks you for what number of brochures are the cost the same for both companies. So think back to what I just talked about with problem 2.3 when I was telling you the two different ways we tried. One way that you could do this problem is to set up a table and try to find where you've got equal amounts for both companies. You could draw a very careful graph, but that is sometimes hard if you're not exact. So a table is a good way to go for this one. Again, they're going to ask you about the y-intercept. So if you look at the table, you can kind of visualize where each of these would cross the y-axis and what that might mean. Sort of similar to the t-shirts. Very similar, in fact. So I would love for you to do the best you can on that problem. There are a few other problems, like this problem we talked about a lot in class. Go ahead and skip number 16. That one's not super essential, and we'll come back to that idea later. For these others, this problem, save that and we'll talk about it together, because I think all of these 22 through 28, there were a few of these were assigned. Come see me during Achievement Block and we'll work on some of those. Okay, so I hope that you got the general idea of some of these problems, and you're able to have a better sense of what the y-intercept means, what it means for the line to be steep, and the rate of change. We're going to talk a lot about that, and how you can use the tables and the equations to start solving problems. All right, I'll see you next week.